Thank you for inviting me to this year's Sustainability Leaders Forum. I'm Rachel Kyte, Dean of the Fletcher School at Tufts University in Massachusetts, and I'm speaking with you today as co-chair of the Voluntary Carbon Markets Integrity Initiative. Today is the first day of the Leaders Forum, and our theme for the day is Ambition into Action. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person, but I expect great things from your interactions and your leadership in what is a critical year for action to close both our ambition and implementation gaps in getting on track for a more sustainable world. COP26 saw commitments, pledges and targets that keep our common climate goal of 1.5 degrees of warming within reach, 1.5 to stay alive, but turning this ambition into action in 2022 will be the real test. Assembled this year at the Sustainability Leaders Forum are over 600 global attendees, more than 100 speakers, leaders from across climate change action, across 25 sessions. The promise and the potential pitfalls of carbon markets, including voluntary carbon markets, are at the epicentre of turning ambition into action. And ahead of today's debate on this issue, I want to talk briefly about how these markets are evolving and how we can ensure they deliver towards the goal of the Paris Agreement. Before, during and after the Paris Agreement, it was private sector leadership that stiffened the resolve of governments to respond to the science, set goals and raise ambition. We see across all sectors of the economy leaders in the private sector committing to keeping 1.5 alive, and every day we see companies asserting they are or will be net zero, climate neutral, or 100 variations on that theme. But the leadership benchmark has moved, and we are well beyond needing rhetoric and plans. How can ambitions turn into action? Some businesses are turning to the voluntary carbon markets to help them plot a pathway to their net zero commitments. After many decades of experiments and activity in voluntary markets, we are now at a different moment. Voluntary markets will need to contribute to our shared global climate goal, which means that they will need to help reduce emissions and provide a steady stream of revenues to those who are rights holders to the assets which back the generation of credits. The market will have to have integrity hardwired in it from end to end, from the quality of credits to the quality of claims made by companies in the market. These voluntary carbon markets, therefore, must be purposeful. There is no room for activity that doesn't lead to the reduction of emissions or decarbonisation in core value chains. Most businesses I work with, and I'm sure this is true of the businesses here today, are focused on how the transitions needed to make their net zero plans can work, on how to recruit talent on that basis, on how to speak to investors about their transition pathways. For financial services firms, the opportunity to serve clients seeking smooth transitions, as well as their own responsibility to meet net zero goals, is front of mind. But in a world of low social trust, and where it only takes one firm to sow seeds of doubt in the public's imagination, and where regulation is dragging, because let's face it, many businesses have lobbied hard against speed and scale, the charge of greenwash can and is forcibly levelled at many firms. Guardrails are needed to be in place so that businesses have the confidence to act, and investors, policymakers, rights holders and the public have confidence that we are moving in the right direction. Last year, we launched the Voluntary Carbon Markets Integrity Initiative to primarily bring forward guidance on how and under what circumstances the private sector should use carbon credits and the claims that they can credibly make about this use. Our beta guidance will be published this April. This will ensure that companies genuinely going the extra mile are suitably recognised alongside addressing greenwashing. This guidance will cover claims ranging from products, carbon neutral coffee, for example, to major multinational businesses' net zero transitions. VCMI is a multi-stakeholder effort, an example of how governments, NGOs and businesses can collaborate to turn ambition into action. Late on the last day of COP26 in Glasgow, the parties to the UN Climate Conventions agreed a rulebook for Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. Unobtainable in Paris and in previous COPs since then, agreement last year was important. Given that Article 6 sets out how countries can cooperate on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, in particular through carbon markets that have long been the subject of controversy, it is a fundamental building block of the architecture we need for a new world of cooperation towards a more inclusive and greener, cleaner world. Finally, then, we have an Article 6 rulebook, and while some important details remain to be worked out, it does effectively set the bar for Paris Agreement-aligned carbon trading. While voluntary carbon markets are not regulated by Article 6, the voluntary markets only have a purpose if they are aligned with Paris, meaning that they must become part of, or very closely aligned with, the future Article 6 carbon market. We should think, therefore, of voluntary markets as glide paths to regulated markets, and therefore the integrity of their operations becomes critically important if they are to land smoothly in achieving their dual purpose, emissions reduction and revenue generation for countries and rights holders that can supply credits. 4 months on from Glasgow, we are on that glide path. The coming months and years will be critical in turning voluntary carbon markets into a credible tool to accelerate action to keep 1.5 alive. And while initiatives like VCMI will play, I hope, an important helping role, it will be the internalising of science-based targets, transition pathway development, alignment of CapEx and R&D and other operations behind net zero goals, and coherent demands for faster and better regulation by your C-suites and boardrooms that will also drive progress. So if 2021 was the year of ambition, 2022 can be the year of ambition into action or implementation. But this needs real public, private and third sector collaboration. The voluntary carbon markets have shown us the importance of this kind of collaboration. While these markets currently sit outside regulation, to be effective, they must work towards the Paris Agreement, they must be grounded in climate science, and they must drive sustainable development and protect rights holders that host projects. Keeping 1.5 alive is all our responsibility, and the voluntary carbon markets show that it takes collaboration between all stakeholders to turn ambition into action. So, with an opportunity for positive change ahead of us, and urged on by young people whose futures we hold in our hands, and with the certainty that the difficulties of working through transitions in our mitigation and adaptation to climate change pale in insignificance against the cost of not doing anything, I would like to thank you all for all that you will do this year to move towards greater speed and scale. Thank you again for this kind invitation to this year's Sustainability Leaders Forum. I look forward to the results of your discussions and to your doubling down on the greatest responsibility we bear, an easing of our war with nature and a world which is cleaner and fairer for all. Thank you.